Hello, everybody. So we are live in a very first event in English for the Bots Brazil community. Before we start or before we say anything, I just would like to be really transparent with the community. This event is going to be in English. This is part of our series called Hello World, which is a really new event series that we are putting together for the Bots Brazil community. All the content is going to be presented in English, but in a few days after, we are going to add Portuguese captioning, and then you can watch it whenever you want to. Everything is going to be presented in English, and you're welcome to help us to do that. Without saying anything, I'm here, or before we start to say anything else, I would like to say hello, Vittorio. Hi.
Hi there.
Hello. How's your day going in California?
It's been going great. I am in Northern California, so it's very different than Hollywood, California. So it's foggy and cold in the summer, and we're very excited about that actually. So
Well, are you based in San Francisco,
yeah,
or where are you right now?
yeah, I'm in San Francisco right now.
How was your past days? You have new things for Botsociety, exciting days, huh?
Yeah, it's been it's the old shelter-in-place pandemic thing has not been easy on anyone, I guess. But apart from that, the stuff that we've been working on with Bot Society, and we launched a new product, and we have a lot of other features coming down the pike. So we're really excited about that.
Well, before we start, we have some people in the live streaming with us watching on YouTube. Can everybody tell us if the audio is okay? If you can listen to Vittorio, if you can see like us, if we're not frozen. My internet is kind of weird right now, so I don't know if everything is doing just fine. Can you just leave a comment saying if everything, yeah. We have few people saying that everything is good. But before we start, can you tell us a little bit about you, Vittorio, what you do, and something that is not on your LinkedIn or something like this?
Okay, sounds good. So I'm Vittorio. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bot Society. Um, and Bot Society is a conversation design tool. So it's like Figma, but for bots. And before doing this, I was developing and designing bots for big companies in Italy with my now co-founder. And but actually, I think something you don't find on my LinkedIn is the first bot that I did. I'm 32 now, so I start to be on let's say the mature side of the tech scene. And the first bot that I did, I was I think 15 or something, and it was on IRC. I don't know if you ever used IRC chat.
We call it ich.
Exactly.
How do you say that in Italian?
We would say IRC.
Ich. Okay.
And and basically, I had a client on my Windows machine which was called Mirch. That's what we would say, Mirch. And it would allow you to do some easy scripting. And so with my 56K dial-up connection, I would come up with this bot. And that actually I should redevelop for Slack as well. It allowed you to save a quote from anyone in the chat. So you could say like, Caio said this, you would say something, and then you would tell to the bot, save this Caio message. And the bot would save it, and then you could say, hey, tell us an important quote from past chats that it's funny, and it would just randomly pick one up and tell it back to you, like, oh, Caio last week said something like this. People were using it a lot to share funny stuff. It was so.
How did it go? Why did you start that? Like, it was really different for the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of the people I knew on the internet were on IRC and IRC on the IRC chat, and we just wanted to, have this feeling that like the community was developing, and so you could like quote somebody else from the community to say that. and and people could invite the bot to their own channels. That's how it was. Like, imagine Slack. If you never used IRC, it's like Slack but for everyone. And you just join rooms in the same way that you join channels on Slack, and people would invite it, and then my mother would like pick up the phone and kill my connection because it was a dial-up connection. The bot would go down, and I would be no, and then I would wait 3 hours for my mother like to end up the phone call, connect it back, and everyone was like, where is the bot? Where was it? And I was like, sorry guys, my mom had to do a phone call.
Oh. So did your mom kill the bot or something like this? Do you still have it?
Well,
The bot, does it still? You said that you should bring again live on Slack or something like this. Do you still have the code and things like that, or it's just a memory?
I have the code, but I don't have the client anymore. I don't think it's feasible. Like, I don't think it works anymore on new Windows, and I don't have a Windows machine either. It was so old that it didn't have a database. I would just put stuff in a TXT file because there was no database technology. So very old.
What do you think about the technology today? It's really different from what it used to be, right?
Yeah, I think I'm really excited about. So there's some things that you can do now that you could do before, but you just do them better because there's more people online, right? But there's also things that you couldn't do before that are qualitative. Like, the quality of the stuff that you can do is like, there's a qualitative difference of the things that you can do now that everyone is online, and that data available is so much. So particularly about like natural language processing and AI, I think, we couldn't even start doing the stuff that we're doing right now with natural language processing back in the days. And it was more about the data than about the theory behind the technology, which is not necessarily new.
Yeah, like today we have access to, like, anyone can do something on the internet, right? Like, it's really accessible to anyone. And I think the big challenge is like how we can create something that is kind of valuable to anyone, to scale it up to other folks. Like, I was talking to a friend last week. Like, I have this problem with my internet right now, right? And last week I had another problem with the internet. I spent like 12 hours without internet connection. In my home, I have smart light lamps. I have Google Home. I have the smart bulbs, the connector to, so I can just say things and my house does things. But without the internet, I couldn't do anything. So thinking about that, like 10 years ago, I don't know, man, completely different. It's really exciting times, I guess. And I don't know, like, where do you think that we might be going? Like, you're in San Francisco, is it something different over there?
So
like,
I think,
Italy, I don't know. Can you see the difference of the relation to knowledge?
Yeah, I think the latest thing that is very interesting. Sorry to cut you off, but you were breaking up a bit. The latest interesting thing I think that's being discussed here, and it's this two kind of like separate topics, but that I think will converge eventually, which is on one side the machine learning, evolution on type of algorithm that you train with data. You actually don't know or don't necessarily know the output when you build them. Just feed them a lot of data and you have outputs. That's been going on for quite some time, so it cannot be hype anymore. And it's actually getting to the point where it's really, really powerful. Like, if you take a look at the latest stuff that OpenAI has put out,
GPT-3, right?
Yeah, exactly. And or even what the guys at Braz are doing, like on the technology side, I think there's a lot there that keeps happening on this space. So I'm excited. And I think on the other side, there's this question that, like, where should technology go? Like, are we breaking democracy the technology, like how it's gonna affect like the ability for everyone to create deep fake videos, how it's gonna affect the political discourse, and if everyone can just create, text content with GPT by OpenAI, like how is that affecting news business and fake news, stuff like that. And so the way that we're looking at Botsociety is it's the intersection between creativity, design, and humanities with this new technology advancements. It's where actually the real deal is going to happen. It's where like the real direction of the things that we're going to see in the future is being defined.
You did a small experiment like months ago with something like GPT-3, right? You type something and then later you'd send. How did that go?
Yeah, it's fun. With previous version, and it's basically just you give them like a prompt, and then the AI creates an article. So it creates a title, around Unsplash, it writes the rest of the article, and then you can ask the author more questions, and the author is an AI as well. And I think it was very fun, and I think 40,000 people created stories so far. So people liked it, but I think for us, as you said, it was an experiment to understand, okay, how far can we bring this, and what are actually people going to ask an AI? If you tell them you can ask the AI to create content for you, what would they actually do? And I think what we're actually doing there is also building a database of how people would use the AI, which I think is interesting from our creativity point of view, how people approach the AI, which is as important as the AI itself, because how we behave is going to influence this technology as much as the technology itself.
That's a long conversation, man. We should be in a bar, something like this.
Yes.
I honestly, on this ice-breaking thing, I thought that you'd mention the carbonara thing and the basketball guy.
Sorry about that.
Are you watching the NBA stuff that is going to be live in, I think, a week, 2 weeks? The bubble?
I hope I'll be able to. To be honest, like I tend to watch highlights after the fact and old games because I just don't have time. Like I was thinking when I was in Italy, like when I will be in the US, I won't have to wake up at night to see a match. But guess what? Now I'm too busy to watch a match, and so I can't see that live neither. Usually I can't watch.
Oh man!
I'm really looking forward to it. If I manage to do that, I really like to play basketball. Like also playing, it's amazing. Like
I love playing basketball. Before being like chubby, like I am right now, I used to be an athlete. It doesn't look like, but I used to play basketball too.
Stop that. You're not chubby.
Huh?
You're not.
I am a little bit. I got some pounds, but everything is good. The carbonara is really good. I love carbonara too. Which team do you support for? Do you root for at the NBA?
I don't have a strong one, to be honest, at the moment. I really like the golf.
Sport.
Yeah, I really like Steve Curry, to watch him play, but I don't have a strong passion for one team, to be honest. I'm a weird fan.
Yeah, I'm like this too. I used to root for the Spurs, but we don't have Ginobili, we don't have Tim Duncan, Tony Parker anymore. So I don't know. We lost Kawhi Leonard to, I don't know which team he's on, but it happens. Let's start.
Yeah.
Let's start our event. So we have a few people here. So whoever is watching us live, please share your questions with us. We have few people watching with us. Rodrigo, Adolfo, Tiago, Yara. I don't know if she's a Brazilian, but seems likely. We have many folks here watching with us live. Um, so before we start or say anything, just would like to present a little bit Bots Brazil. We are a community of people interested in bots, conversational UI, and AI. We were created in 2016 to promote conversations in Portuguese or to bring discussions, like global discussions, to our Brazilian context. Our community today, we have about 11,000 people. Actually, we have about more than 12,000 people. We just passed this mark. And we write a lot in our blog. We have more than 250, and we hosted more than 40 in-person events when that was possible, like a few months ago. And we even have some events in San Francisco, which you were on this one too, right?
Yeah, I was there.
Actually, you were in all of those, right? The Wolfbot meetup. You were in the first one at the Mozilla.
Yeah, I think we did.
Yeah, it was free. Yeah. Yeah, this is a photo from the World Bot Meetup, which is the global meetup with many folks from different countries. It was really fun to get to know everybody. And usually before we start, we just mention our code of conduct, which is basically, as a community, we want to create like a inviting, safe environment to anyone to share or exchange experiences, learning, collaborate, and promote equity, and of course, networking too. We do not tolerate bullying, harassment, or any discrimination or public humiliation. We do not promote like breach of laws or promotion of misuses of the existing solutions in the market. We also, everybody present here, like even me, we need to follow this guidance. Everybody's welcome to take care of the space that we are. Right now we are on YouTube, which is something new for us. But if we were in person, we would ask you to be careful with the things, do not break anything or something like that. And know that everything that we are doing here, we are trying to promote content, knowledge, experience to use, so everybody can learn something from here. Vittorio, he's the CEO and co-founder of Botsociety. Of course, he's going to talk a lot about his product, but know that he's here to help us to learn something new. If you're curious about why you're seeing this in English, or just for the record, this is a new series that we're putting together. We're calling this Hello World, which is basically we want to connect, learn, and share things with the world in the new series of meetups that we're going to broadcast live in English. Anyone can join the live with us. In the end, we're going to open for Q&A section. You can speak either in English or in Portuguese. I'm going to help you to translate some things. I don't know how is the Vittorio's Portuguese going, but I can help with that too. So that's it. Today, Vittorio is here. She's going to talk about conversational design patterns. He is the co-founder and CEO of Botsociety. He has really interesting and new stuff to share with us today. So have fun, enjoying this moment, and everybody that is watching us, please share your questions with us, okay? Vittorio, I think your slides, it's on the live stream now, and you can present. Have fun. I'm going to be on backstage.
Awesome. Thank you, Caio. I'm excited about doing this. So I'm going to talk about conversation design patterns. So I had a few slides about me. We talked about me a bunch, so I'm just going to go through them very quickly. I'm Vittorio. I'm the co-founder of Botsociety. Botsociety is a solution to design conversation interfaces, whether it's chat or voice. And those are some of our customers. We're based in San Francisco and Italy. Again, I'm going through those fast because I want to get to the interesting point for the community, which is conversation design patterns. And before we dive into that, I want to give you a little bit of framework about what I'm going to refer generally. So the first idea is what is conversation design. So what is conversation design? And I refer to conversation design as the act of designing for any type of conversational interfaces. Now the question is like, okay, what are conversation interfaces? They are any type of interface where the main interaction is the conversation. So whether it's through chat, voice, both, or any type of other, like if you had a VR game and you would talk with a character, I'm not sure if that would be like a voice interaction per se, because you're also having an experience inside the VR world, but it would be a conversational interface. And so we built Botsociety 2, which is the new one. So if you used Botsociety in the past, it's not going to be the same. But we built it with conversational principles in mind, with conversation design principles in mind. So I'm going to explain some of the ideas using examples from Botsociety, but you can apply them anywhere. You can apply them with any tool and any type of conversation interface, however you end up building it or designing it. So the thing that we need to start from is conversation interfaces are fundamentally different, are a fundamentally different type of interface. And the reason is that you don't have a lot of the things that you would normally have on graphical or user interface, and you have new things. So for example, you don't have colors in a conversation interface, but you have a personality. And I like to make this comparison because a personality, it doesn't matter if you don't define the personality of your conversational AI, your users will perceive one in the same way that you can not have colors in your graphical user interface. It's either going to be white or black or red or whatever. So you need to pick colors, you need to pick a personality. And you don't have screens, like you don't have screen 1 and screen 2, right? But you have flows, so you will decide where the user is going to go with that kind of mindset. And you don't have buttons, but you have questions. And even when your bot comes up with buttons, those are basically just suggestions to answers that your bot is asking. So the main interaction is a question. Instead of a button in a graphical user interface. And so I have 3 main things about this talk that I would like you to get away with at the end of this talk. So the first one is, okay, we're going to see the difference between an engineering pattern for conversation interfaces and a design pattern. I'm going to explain why this difference is interesting. Then we're going to see 3 examples of conversational design patterns. And then I'm going to show you how to put them into practice. Okay? And so I want to start with the difference between engineering patterns and design patterns. And one of the pioneers of our industry, Nandini Stalker, said it out best to me in one of our calls. So I hope she doesn't get mad if I just use it in this slide. She said, like, engineers look at the conversation the right way, just upside down. And I think it's interesting to establish this difference because, of course, like, the engineering approach is the first one that developed historically. And so you will find a lot of content around that, which is all good and fine. But if you take a design approach, which is the right way of approaching a conversation design, then, you should be able to make a difference between the engineering approach and the design approach. And so I'm sure you know this stuff, but so this is the technical point of view of how a bot works, right? So you have the user input, say the user says I, it goes through this natural language processing engineer, right? This can be Dialogflow, this could be Rasa, this could be the Mike Lewis, it could be different ones. Basically, every cloud provider has a solution for this. And then the natural language processing is taking this unstructured user input and it's saying, okay, this is actually one of the intents I was trained on, and it transfers it to a symbol, to symbolic representation that the rest of your code can use. And then that triggers one of the messages that were defined for the bot. This is the technical point of view. Now, if you take a design approach, that's not how you see the interaction going. Sorry, I skipped one important part. So this is the technical point of view. And then when the user sends another message, this thing just loops again and starts again like this, right? Now, the designer point of view, when you're designing an interface, then it's different. Like the point of view that you're taking is different. It's the same interaction, but the way that you're looking at it is, okay, there's a message from the bot. The user understands the context of the conversation and tries to figure out if the intent that the user already had can be satisfied by the bot. And then the user will send a message, and then the bot will respond, and then hopefully the intent of the user will be satisfied. The user will be like, okay, that's what I wanted. And this can be longer, shorter, more complex, but that's the basic interaction. So you can see that it's a fundamentally different way of looking at the same thing. It's not to say that this is wrong and this is good, or vice versa. I'm just saying it's a different point of view, and when you're designing, you need to have this more holistic approach to the experience in order to provide a good design. And so, for example, and again, like, I'm not going to stress this too much, but just to give you an example, that's why in Botsociety, the structure that you have when you're designing, it's separate and decoupled from the intent structure, which is how technically engineers will think about your interaction. In other words, like when you design, you split your interaction paths, they will or will not match the intents that are then defined to actually make the natural language processing work and the rest of the logic work. And you want to do that so that you're decoupled from that and you can design freely without thinking about that, without having to be constrained to the intent structure, because your point of view is different. Okay, so those were the differences between engineering patterns and design patterns. So now that we established this, let's take a look at some examples of conversation design patterns. So the idea about conversation design patterns is, okay, you have in your mind a precise idea of how a conversation should be, because you've been talking your whole life, but it's not an atomic concept, as in like, it's difficult to slice a conversation in pieces that you can reuse in other conversations. It's something that comes so natural that that's not how your brain is working when you're talking. But instead, when you're designing this kind of interfaces, it's useful to have some building blocks, some ideas that you can apply in different interfaces over and over again. So that's what I mean with conversation design patterns. It's going to get clearer now that we show them, but that's my objective with it. So I'm going to talk about three. Those are just three. There's many, many more. I'm just trying to come up with the most important ones that I feel like you will use in any conversation design that you will ever come up with. But of course, there's more. So the three ones that I'm going to talk about today is dedicated repair paths, multi-level repair paths, and slot filling paths. I'm using the expression path because I like the concept of the happy path, the unhappy path, that you mutate from other disciplines. Okay, so before we dive into this, why am I talking about repair path? So the initial idea is like, okay, you define the happy path as the best interaction possible between the bot and the user. What happens is everything goes great, and the bot and the user understand each other. Then you have the concept of a repair path. So what happens if the bot and the user do not understand each other? And if you ever use the bot, I'm sure you encountered one, a repair path. And you usually have general repair path, as in like repair paths that are always applied, doesn't matter what happened before them. So in this case, like I designed here on the right-hand side my general repair path. I hope you can read it, but anyway, the idea is like, if the user says something that a natural language processing engine cannot understand, we just come up with a generic, I'm sorry, did not understand you. In this case, it's a little bit better than I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. I designed a repair path that is more explicit. I can help you buy pizzas from local shop. Which pizza would you like? So it's trying to repair the conversation back to a place where the user and the bot can understand each other. But still, this is going to get triggered regardless of what happened in the previous messages of the conversation. So let's introduce the concept of a dedicated repair path. So dedicated repair path, and this is the pattern that I want to talk about now, is a path that does not only repair when the user and the bot do not understand each other. It doesn't do that. It repairs a specific portion of the conversation. In other words, you can say, okay, I have an interaction. What happens if the user and the bot do not understand each other at this specific point? And you design a dedicated repair message, in this case, to repair the conversation. Example, hi there, I would like to buy a pizza. And then the bot comes back and says, what is your address? Now, if the user says something that the bot does not understand, then at this point, my dedicated repair path triggers. And the bot goes like, I was expecting an address, like 14 Mission Street. And so if you use this technique, this design pattern, then you're going to be able to repair conversation at a way higher rate. And you're going to be able to build better trust between the bot and the user. And I can explain why, I can articulate more why you're building more trust, but that's the idea, right? So like you have a dedicated repair path for a specific part of the conversation. The bot acknowledges that the conversation is at that point, and it helps the user specifically get through that question. Higher conversation rate recovery. And so dedicated repair paths, very important to create trust. And the reason why you always want to create trust, the reason why it creates trust is because it reflects one of the principles of the conversation, which is collaboration. So if me and you were talking, we're sharing an objective of the conversation, and it should be shared among us, and we should try to collaborate to get where we want to go. And if you feel like on the other side there's no collaboration, the conversation is going to break down, or it's going to feel weird. And so a dedicated repair path achieves this collaboration idea. All right, this was the dedicated repair path. Multi-level repair paths. So a multi-level repair path, what's the idea? All right, let's say that you're repairing a conversation. What happens if even after you say, I'm sorry, did not get you, this is what I can do, still the user and the bot do not understand each other? Then can you design a repair path of the repair path? So in other words, can you continue your interaction? Can you say, okay, I'm sorry, did not get you, I was expanding an address, and then the user says something you cannot repair, and so you have a second message which is different than the one before. And also this one is acknowledging that this is already the second time the conversation is not going forward. And so how long should you do this? Well, you can do, a good practice is to do it 3 times, 3 levels. So like, I'm sorry I did not get you. I'm sorry I did not get you again. This is really not working. What should we do? And so this is a multi-level repair path. And if you do that, you will see that the conversion of the rate at which you can repair a conversation, get them back on the happy path, is higher, substantially higher, for the principle that I was mentioning before. Higher perceived collaboration, there's more shared understanding of what the conversation is and where we want to go, because I'm acknowledging, the body's acknowledging that there's an issue and it's trying to fix it actively. It's not just repeating the same thing over and over again. And you can notice, I don't know if you can read this, but like in this design on my third level, I'm proposing to the user to get in touch with a human to repair this conversation, because I think it's too complex to understand most probably. Not the most elegant situation, not always possible, but just to give you an idea. So those were multi-level repair paths. Notice that, all right, I'll say this later. Now, third thing I wanted to show you, then done slot filling paths. What's slot filling? There's a lot of text in this slide, so I'm just going to say it and show you the image. The slot filling is when you need, in order to satisfy an intent from the user, you need multiple data points. You need multiple things from the user. The classic example is this one. Hey, you know, I'm a bot that helps you rent, you know, a caravan, RV, to have a vacation trip. But in order to propose you some solutions, I need to understand when you're planning your vacation, and where would you like to go? And then I can propose you to rent a car or something like that. So you need multiple things. In this case, for example, you need the departure date, the return date, sorry, and the destination, right? So you have these 3 data points that you need from the user. In this example, I just designed 2. And so you can design an interaction where you can approach it so that if the user can give you all the information in one message, in one go, or the user can just tell you one thing and then the bot comes back and says, great, you want to go there. Like in this example, when the bot is asking, where would you like to go and when would you like to leave? And so the user says, I would like to go to that valley or just that valley. And the bot says, okay, great, that valley, when would you like to leave? And the user says next week. So this is a back and forth versus the user can just say, I want to go that valley next week. That's one phrase. And the bot just understands that. You can design this, like there's the technology to do this in the same way that there's technology to do dedicated repair paths and multi-level repair paths. But it's more a design challenge, like you need to phrase the questions and the interaction in such a way so that unexperienced users can just type one thing after the other because maybe they don't feel as confident. And your power users or users who are more used to bots, they can just tell you everything in one go and get very fast to the point that you want to reach. So slot filling, very powerful. You can use it multiple ways. And I mentioned this because you can also think about a lot of your interactions as slot fillings once you know that you have this possibility. So there are some use cases like this one where it's more clear that this is the direction, but there's others where it may not be as clear, but it can actually be very powerful. Okay, this is slot filling. So as I was mentioning, I skipped this. You want to design the question in a way that both nudges and shows you what's possible, but also allows you to give one information at a time. One point, though, that I didn't mention is when you're designing this, also keep your stakeholders aligned. That an interesting metric here is how fast does the user arrive at the end of the intent to the objective they want the user to reach, and how fast we get there. And that may be tricky for some organizations that are usually measuring, time spent on site or retention and stuff like that. And instead here, a good interaction is a fast interaction. So keep everyone aligned there. So those were 3 examples of conversation design patterns. How do you put them into practice? Well, there's a lot of ways you can start designing these interfaces with a lot of different tools. My suggestion would be, I think the right approach from a design point of view is you pick something that allows you to design for any type of conversation, because in the same way that you don't want to switch tools when you're switching from desktop to mobile, you don't want to switch when you're switching from IVR to chat interfaces or vice versa. And also, I think it's important that you pick a solution that integrates with any thing that the engineering team decides to pick, so that even if they change, the framework, they switch, say, from Dialogflow to Rasa or whatever, it's not like you need to relearn again another solution, which really decreases the efficiency and the profession, the level of quality that you can deliver as a designer. Because you'll always be limited by whatever technology is picked at that specific moment, instead of the other way around. So yeah, am I skipping something? That's how you put stuff into practice. So you can also use a flowchart tool. You can also go on Word to try those patterns out, of course. So yeah, thank you. I think I skipped to one slide, which is Botsociety to waitlist, but actually we launched it, so that's not needed anymore. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm back. What did you launch? Tell everybody. Like, can we use it already?
Yeah.
How can we walk through?
We launched Botsociety 2, and you can, like, if you sign up on Botsociety now, that's the default, so you'll see that. It's totally different than the original Botsociety.
Mm-hmm. What is the biggest difference from before and now? Like, what are your go-to?
Yeah, so it looks more like this, and the idea is that with Botsociety 1, it was mainly a prototype tool. So you could like prototype very fast, kind of like InVision, from 0 to a video. And with Botsociety, you can do the whole thing. So not only prototype, but also design the entire interaction, the entire blueprint. You have an infinite canvas where you can really structure your conversation meaningfully.
Well, we have one question related, not about that in particular, but it's kind of related, which it's Adolfo. He asked in the beginning of your presentation that you said that Bot Society is like Figma, but for bots. You got me curious. Can you elaborate? He's for your information, he loves Figma like a lot. So I think that's why he's curious.
Absolutely. So, okay, so this is the idea. So conversational interface, it's just another interface. So you need a design tool, right? But you cannot really use Figma to design a bot. And the reason is, like, as I was saying, like, you don't have buttons, but you have questions, and you don't have colors, but you have a personality. Like, it's a fundamentally different type of interaction that follows different concepts. And so what you need is a dedicated tool. Botsociety is built like Figma in the way that it's a general purpose, so you can design for any type of interface. So if tomorrow you go on Botsociety and you say, oh, I want to design, an interface that lives on the car and then on my phone, and how a user switches between those, you can do that, right? So it's general purpose, and it's separate from the engineering solution, right? So like, if your engineers pick up a technology to build a website and pick up another technology to build a mobile app, you can still use Figma for both. And it should be the same for bots. Like, you should have an all-purpose, decoupled design solution for conversational interfaces. And we think that that's the only way to kind of like push the ecosystem forward, so that the design community can really meaningfully participate in conversational AI.
it seems to me that you want folks to just work in one tool and do not do the extra work to being back and forth, like using Figma to show and then not being actionable. And with Botsociety, it's kind of you can design there and it's kind of ready to go, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can then, we integrate with, say, Dialogflow and Rasa, and so you can export your design and give it to your engineers in a format that it's engineering friendly. But you should not, like, as a designer, you should follow your own process, which is different than the engineering building process. So in the same way that, like, in Figma, you want to follow a design principled process where you just move the button around until it looks good, it should be the same for conversation interfaces, where you keep changing it until it seems fine without having to develop the whole thing.
We have another question here. This is related to slot filling pattern. This, I don't know if I think his name is Steve, I guess. In terms of slot filling pattern, what should I keep in mind in terms of user freedom when answering? How does conversational engineering take account of different ways people write their answers?
That's a great question, by the way. Also, the previous one was a very good question. Sorry for not mentioning that, Adolfo. Steve, I think that's a very good point. So what's interesting here is that the technologies that are, I would say, available as commodities now, like Rasa and Dialogflow and Lewis and, you know, all of those, they all allow for a relatively high degree of freedom. What's interesting, it's more like, what's the level of freedom that you as a designer are comfortable with? And so one way that I think you can define that is by supplying utterances, which means the different phrases that the user can express that part of the conversation that you're designing. So I'm not sure if the way I'm explaining this is clear. Being able to show this IRL would be easier, but
do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, let me see if I can bring up an example very fast. Basically, let's say that you're saying, okay, the interaction is, I want to go to that valley next week. That was the example in the presentation. And so basically, you have different levels. So this is one phrase, right? But you could define multiple phrases that the user could say to define the same thing. And that would help your engineering team understand what's the level of freedom needed, just by providing more utterances and examples. And that helps you define. Usually what we see is that that does not complete all the training that you need technically, but if you're able to start defining them in the design phase, then you can do that. So let me see if I can show you an example here of what I mean. Okay, so again, of course, like, I'm gonna show you a Botsociety example, but there's a principle that you can apply everywhere. So let's say you're designing a slot filling, and so it's like, I can help you rent RVs. I'm shouting. Where, too late to fix. Where would you like to go and when? Right? And then the user can say, I would like to leave next week for that valley. So now this is just one example. So as you were saying, like, it's not very clear what's the level of freedom. So what you can do is you can add utterances, so variations of the same thing. So for example, in this case, it's just next week for that valley. So now I have two, and you can say, okay, but there's other variations that you can add. And by adding those, you're going to define the level of freedom that is acceptable to you. And then technically, like once you have this artifact that's kind of like more detailed, then it's going to be a breeze to explain it to the engineering team, because they will see kind of like a plastic example of what the boundaries are for this type of question. I hope I answered. Please let me know if it's not the case. I can give more examples and explanation.
If Steve is there, please let us know in the comments. We have more questions though. One from Tiago. Can you see it? Can you read it? I don't know if you can see there. We have one from Tiago, another one from André, and one from Janaína. Tiago is asking like, can I design for voice using Botsociety? What are the differences in design patterns using chatbots or voice bots?
It's a great question, Tiago. Thank you. So yes, you can design for voice. You can even design for SSML, which is very cool. So let me show you that.
That's really cool, indeed.
And then yes, the conversation design patterns. The cool thing is that you can apply them across the board. As long as the interface is a conversation, you can apply them. So this is the new design of Botsociety. So I can pick a voice interface or a chat interface. And if I pick a voice interface like the Google Assistant, then I can also design for SSML. So I can say, I am speaking faster. That's how it sounds. Oh wait, I just muted.
I am speaking faster.
But then I can select it, and kind of like you would do in Word, you can say this is faster. So fast, it's going to show that it's faster.
I am speaking faster.
And I can also say extra fast.
I am speaking faster.
And you have pitch, you have emphasis. So you can also design audio. Sorry, that sidetracked me. So yes, you can design for voice. You can also design for multiple devices, which is very powerful. So you can say what happens if the same interactions happens on a voice device, which has a screen, which may be different. So very powerful voice capabilities. And also, the cool thing is you can apply those same principles across the board. So these patterns that I showed you, I could design them here for voice, and then just 1 second later, just apply them to a WhatsApp bot. It would work.
I love this thing for SSML.
It's really powerful.
Yeah, it's great. We have another question from André. He is asking, can you tell the best ways to implement amazing designs without over-engineering them?
That's a very good question. So I think over-engineering is always an issue, regardless of your design. Like it's always something that can happen there. I think the best way to avoid it as a designer is to be very deliberate when you're defining the use case. So when you're thinking, okay, what is the use case? What is the main objective of this bot? The sharper, the more focused you are, especially when on the first version of the bot, the more your engineering team will be able to be crisp in defining the technology behind your design. Because a sharp definition of the use case helps avoiding unnecessarily, engineering, over-engineering. And so, for example, like let's say that you want to make a bot for an airline, it's way better to say we're just going to go after luggage questions as our first use case. Anything related to luggages, but only that, versus trying to do everything. Right? That already is going to help you tenfold in defining and avoiding over-engineering. So being crisp and deliberate on the use case, I think, is the best way to do that.
Yeah, being really objective with whatever you want to do. Next question from Janaína. Janaína is very popular down here. She is the leader of the vui community. It's a big community too. If you want to talk more about voice in Brazil, she's the one. In Murilo, he's somewhere here too. So Janine is asking, like, what do you think of the platform having more languages, both in the creation of conversations and during use?
Janina, thanks for the question. Are you thinking about platform as in like the Google Assistant, or platform as in like the tools to create them, like Botsociety? If it's about like the final platform for the user, like the Google Assistant, Alexa, Messenger, I think multi-language is very important, and I think Google has been doing an amazing job there, and I think that the response from the users kind of rewarded that, and everyone was able to see that. So, for example, like Google really pushed to do like Dutch speaking languages, which is kind of hard in terms of speech recognition, stuff like that. But the response from the market was very good, and the users were engaged. Just an example. Or doing voice interfaces specifically for the Indian market, which may have in theory the same language as English, but like all the cultural context and the implicit conversation is very different, and so you cannot really just take what's made in America and put it there and expect it to resonate with users. It just does not work. So, and same thing, by the way, between UK and US. So I think once you have those big platforms that are making huge investments, it's then easier to make the case for other projects to do the same, especially if those investments turn out right. And I think Google has demonstrated that, so I'm excited about seeing that more and more across the whole ecosystem now that we had like this huge bump worked out. I hope I got the question right.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I have Google Home here, and it's tricky for me to speak. I can speak either in Portuguese or English, but whenever I speak in English and ask something in Portuguese, like, "Hey," I'm not going to say because he's going to listen. Hey, play Lenine. Lenine is a Brazilian singer. He doesn't get it. Like, he doesn't know what I'm saying. Or hey, play Terno Rei, which is another band it's a Brazilian band. It doesn't work, and it's kind of complicated being mixing this. I know that is my fault too. Like, I should be speaking in Portuguese, but it's tricky, I guess, to make these experiences to be multi-languages. I think that Steve, coming back to Steve's questions, he was wondering about, like, do users have to answer the exact way I design it I think on Botsociety?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the answer is no, they won't have to, because you can use those training phrases that I was showing before, those utterances, as starting point to train, say, a Dialogflow instance or a Rasa instance in the future, or other natural language processing engines that allow your bot to understand what the user is saying without forcing the user to use the exact same words. And so
that happened a lot. Like, this weekend we were talking in the WhatsApp group, like someone posted like a print screen from it was a Google Assistant action. The Google Assistant said, like, hey, if you want to talk to someone, say talk to someone. And then the person said, like, talk to someone. But the way that the person said was different than the way that the bot introduced it and didn't get it. And we're just like, well, it's about the same. Just the one is capitalized, the word, and the other is not. And it was supposed to be exact, but I don't know how to say something like that. Hey, T capitalized or something like this. It was just weird. We have one question, I think it's from Luciana, and we can finish like this with this question. Is that okay for you?
Sure.
This is from Luciano. I think this is the latest one he wanted to show us. When a bot has multiple intents, how can I inform the users about such possibilities?
I think this is a very, very good question, Luciano, because you don't have a lot of words to express all the different intents, right? You cannot greet the user and say, oh, I can do 20 things. Let me tell you, I can do this and this and this. And then after 20 minutes, the user is like, okay, thank you. You have some real estate, we say in English. So like you have some space that you can use, and that's about it. Or time, if it's a voice interface, which is the same. So I think you have two things that are very powerful. So the first one is you establish context. So maybe you don't detail all the different intents, but you establish in general what the bot can do to help. In the same way that when you're stepping into a shop, the name of the shop and the products on display are telling you more or less what are you going to find in that shop, and then you can ask for more to the clerk. Your bot has to establish more or less what is the area that can help you with, and then the user will try to explore it and ask the bot for the specific thing that they want. So establishing context is really powerful, and you can do that with more generic terms without going into details. Another technique is leading with one specific intent. So something like, hey, I'm weather bot. I can tell you the weather tomorrow. But then, the user can also ask the weather next month, or can ask the weather last year, or whatever. But you lead with one. There's another technique. The third one that I found really powerful, but it's more tricky, is you define a personality that expresses kind of like what the bot is about. So if the bot is about sport, then you will have a clearly sporty personality of someone that is really gonna, I don't know, that is fit and it's talking fast, and his profile picture is someone with a bandana or something. Or if it's a voice interface, you hear some sounds of him playing tennis or whatever. And so you kind of like establish the context through the personality, which is more synthetic and direct than just having to list everything.
I think that sums up. Like these are really interesting tips. Well, that was fun. I really like it, the presentation. I hope you like it too, to be part of these little experiments that we did. It was to be a little bit different, right? We were supposed to record first, but then I guess this is way better than what we were planning to do.
Yeah.
So I would like to thank the community to be part of this. Just reminding you, this is our new series of meetings. We're going to do this every month or so. These events are going to be broadcasted in English. We're going to add the captioning later, so you can watch this in Portuguese if oh my gosh, if you would like to do that. I'm sorry, but that's it. Today I talked with Vittorio about conversational design patterns. Please let us know in the comments if you like it. This event was good for you. If you enjoy and have this conversation with Vittorio. And Vittorio, thank you so much for being here with us. Would you like to say anything else or a final message that you didn't say in the presentation?
I want to say thank you to the community. I think the questions have been really interesting as well. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the community creates. I think I also wanted to say obrigado. Is that right?
Yeah, you got it.
I'm trying to work on my accent there.
Well, obrigado, you too. And talk to you later, right?
All
So
right.
bye, everybody. Have a good week, and I hope you stay safe in your home. Bye-bye.
Bye.